Mm.
Okay, we're about to go live. And here we go. Going live, going live, going live. And we're officially live. All right, we are going to stall for un momento, por favor. All right, as people are starting to jump onto our YouTube channel right now, we're so grateful as you start to enter into our panel topic conversation for tonight, which I will explain in a few moments. But before I do, just going to keep on stalling, because we know it's 6 o'clock on the dot, but there's other things happening. People are just probably finishing up dinner. I know no one eats dinner that early unless you got kids. So I don't know, but there's people jumping on. Hey, if you're on the chat right now, would you let us know? Put your a waving emoji, a smile, something like that to let us know that you're there. Shannon, good to see you've jumped on there. Good evening. So excited for tonight as well. Whoever else is there, jump in the chat. Yes, good to see you. Church family jumping on right now. People from all over the place. Fantastic. Hope you had a really good afternoon. For those who are watching this, it is Father's Day currently as we film this live. So happy Father's Day to all the dads right now in Australia. It's actually, I have got a UK friend on the chat with us tonight. It's not Father's Day in the UK, is it?
Every day's Father's Day in the UK.
Correct.
It's not how I like to see
it. So it's not Father's Day in the UK, but it's Father's Day in Australia. So for all the dads that are jumping on, happy Father's Day. We're so grateful for all of you, and for all the single dads out there or single mums who are doing it tough during this time as well. Our thoughts are with you. You are amazing. You are champions and heroes. I know I definitely could not raise kids on my own. Oh my dear Jesus, I would probably, it would be a mess. I'm so grateful. But anyways, we're going to start to unravel what is the topic for tonight. So if you're in the chat, again, we're grateful to have you here watching live with us. But tonight's topic I will get to in just a moment. Firstly, I'm going to introduce our panel for tonight. Our panel for tonight, every week we bring in the best of the best. That's what we do. We don't go to the bottom shelf, always the top shelf. And I'm really grateful for two people who have never been on a panel with us so far, but I'm sure we'll have them back again in the future. But I'll introduce to my top left, I think, for everyone's screen, is Pam Burrow, who is the principal of C3 College. Pam, good to have you on.
So nice to be here. So fun. I've been watching these panels and thinking, this is a very cool idea. So so good to get the invite, and I'm glad to be here. It'll be fun, great conversation, I think.
It will. I hope so too. It will, definitely.
Yeah.
And then down the bottom of the screen here, a friend of mine we met many moons ago, years ago, actually.
1850, I think.
Was it 1850?
Yeah.
But we've aged fantastic, haven't we?
Well, you know.
But we're going to welcome all the way from Brighton in the UK, Brighton, which is probably one of the very few beaches in the UK. Actually, I don't know anything about the geography of the UK, but I have been there. But all the way from Brighton, we have David Hoffbrand. Good to have you with us, David.
Hello, hi. I'm mainly just avoiding childcare, to be honest. So it's no, it's great to be. It's really great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
Come on, mate. We're grateful that you could be a part of it with us tonight. And I just have to say, and I'm sure everyone in the chat is going to agree with this, David Hoffbrand has just got such a great voice. If I could get anyone to narrate a book for me, could you do that? If I did like an audio book of some type, David, I would choose your voice.
Really? That's really nice. That's very nice of you to say that. But I ironically, my own book is narrated by someone else.
No way.
I know. I need to knuckle that. But thank you for saying that. And of course, but we'll have to sign some kind of prenup. Okay, so if I'm going to do your voiceover for your book, I feel like I don't know, because I don't know what you might cut it up and use it to do nefarious things. So sure,
it's a good chance. It's a good chance that could happen. But we are grateful to have both of you on, and just to again, both of these guys are really amazing followers of Jesus. Again, Pam running a great Bible college, and David, he mentioned already his book. He wrote a book some years ago called The Jewishness of Jesus.
David, the Jewish Jesus.
The Jewish
Just the
Jesus,
Jews.
sorry.
Yes,
The Jewish
that's okay.
Jesus. That's all right. The Jewish Jesus. I have got a copy of it. Sorry, I just got the title.
So
But the Jewish Jesus, and he talks about, again, I'll get you to explain it in just a moment, David, but really how Jesus as a Jewish man and how that now relates even to our Christianity today, I believe. So really, actually give us a little rundown of what that was all about.
Well, we exist in a kind of funny place, don't we, as Christians? Because we're reading this book written by Jews, largely about Jews, was originally written for Jews. You know, they didn't write that. They didn't kind of get together and go, well, let's write a bestseller. We'll write the Bible. Let's call it the Bible. Yeah, we want an old bit and a new bit. And, you know, it's like, it's written by Jews, and it's sort of, we're following this Jewish Messiah and the teachings of his Jewish disciples, and yet somehow we see all the Jewish stuff as peripheral, you know, which is kind of weird, really, isn't it? So the church has kind of thrown out the baby of learning with the bathwater of legalism, and kind of thrown out everything Jewish and stripped itself and robbed itself effectively of the context of Jesus's teaching. But also Jesus, you know, it's more challenging that Jesus continues to identify as a Jew, right? Even the very last thing he says about himself is it's like he's just popping back in, just like, oh, there was just one last thing. I'm the root and offspring of David. You know, he talks about being on the throne of David, even in his resurrected state. So when we restore the Jewishness of Jesus, which is what the book is, the book's called The Jewish Jesus, Reconnecting with the Truth About Jesus, Israel, and the Church. And what I believe is that, and what I found for me, and, you know, I grew up in a Jewish family, but coming into faith in Jesus, I had to rediscover for myself what it meant to be a Jewish follower of Jesus. And when you restore all this stuff, you start to get a richness of the teaching of Jesus. You know, you see this kind of move of discipleship that we're talking about. That was lost because we lost the Jewish context, right? So what's happening at the moment is actually just restoring something to the church. I like to call it recaf. You know, it's like coffee that was kind of decaffeinated and now is being recaffeinated, or, you know,
so good.
It's the truth, isn't it? This stuff is not like we're kind of finding some new exotic truths to add to our faith. We're just peeling back. Like in the book, I talk about read without religion. Because if you just strip away the layers of kind of tradition, not just big tradition, but our traditions of how we read the Bible, you see it very clearly. You understand, okay, Jesus isn't inviting anyone to join a religion. He's inviting people to be disciples. You know, it's all about discipleship, community, all of these things you start to see. So really, my book is just aimed at anybody. It's not like a scholarly book. It's like aimed to give people a platform in reconnecting with the Jewishness of Jesus, what it means that God still has a plan for the Jewish people, all of that, how to integrate that, and what it looks like in the church. What we're supposed to learn by being in a marriage, Jew and Gentile together. I don't know, you guys snuck in somehow. Paul calls you the wild olive, you know?
You're the wild olive.
I think you guys
I
need
like
to own
that
more. The wild
I'm going to
olive.
own that. I love that. The wild
you
olive.
are the wild olive. So the book is for anyone, right? It's not a niche book, because I think also the other thing that's happened is somehow this stuff got relegated to some niche topic. You know what I mean? It's like for people who are interested in Jewish stuff, and it's like, if you're reading the Bible, you're interested in Jewish stuff. If you're following Jesus, you're interested in Jewish stuff, you know, and if you're not following, I don't know who you're following, but so this stuff is not it's not some kind of obscure book. And I really wanted to write a book that A, was accessible to anyone, and B, brought these three things together in a way that is really like meaningful for our faith, right? Because for me, this stuff is not about head knowledge, because actually this stuff, and we'll talk about the emotional stuff later, but this is a lot about restoring the humanity of Jesus. It's a lot about understanding what he's actually calling us to do and to be. And it's not that I'm about like restoring Jewish things because they're Jewish. That's not the point. And it's not about trying to make people more Jewish, because really, trust me, that, you know, you don't necessarily, there's a lot of food, there's a lot of wine, and it's you know, but it's really about helping people in their faith. This stuff for me is only useful as much as it actually helps us to know God, express God, build vibrant churches and so on. So that's really a summary of my whole kind of thing with the book, and I guess where I'm coming from generally, you know.
So good, amazing. And honestly, I'm gonna have to get you on for another one just to talk about and unpackage that a bit more, but we will go to different parts of that journey, as you mentioned already, and how what the examples or the patterns that Jesus left for us that are important for resting and restoring our soul. But Hey, before we jump into it, I want to ask a question. Your favorite movie of all time? Pam, what's your favorite movie of all time? This is just an icebreaker before we get into this for tonight.
Probably two, and they're both old. Shawshank Redemption.
Nice.
Absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other end of the spectrum, Top Gun. Sorry, but, Tom Cruise in the 80s. And
Tom Cruise in the 80s.
Before, anyway.
Yes.
I
like that.
Just loved it. And also there's a lot of great principles. I've preached on church planting stuff out of Top Gun. I know it's hard to believe.
Of course you have.
Of course.
No, I believe it. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So good. All right, David, your favorite movie of all time. I know you've got one.
It's tough, man. This is really tough. I'll go highbrow and lowbrow,
Please.
So highbrow would be like something like The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman. From the
wow. Very high.
Look, I'm a liberal Jewish intellectual disguised in a kind of kind of Christian kind of lifestyle. So I grew up in a quite intellectual, and those kind of films definitely had a big influence on me. But it's a very amazing film, right? And you see it kind of influence a lot of films. And then I'm trying to think lowbrow. I don't have a lot.
I thought you were going to go with Happy Gilmore or something, because you got lowbrow.
I do like The Wedding Singer. Let's go with The Wedding Singer.
Yeah, let's go with The Wedding Singer. Classic.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, and look, for what it's worth, my favorite movie of all time is Chef. I love the movie Chef. It's unreal. The food truck. I've watched it. I'm not even joking. I've watched it now 19 times. It's how much I just love it. It's one of those movies you put on and you just feel good. I love the food in it. I want to eat it. Makes me feel like getting some type of grilled cheese sandwich, and it just makes. It's just my thing. It's my thing. Don't judge me, David. I can see you doing it. But anyway,
I wasn't judging. I was actually thinking I'm just going to go and get some food, but it's okay. I'll stay.
All right, so we're going to jump in the topic, and if you're on the chat tonight, the goal of our panels on Sunday night when we get to do this live especially is that we want to be able to answer questions that maybe you have. Now, the topic for tonight is this: resting and restoring your soul. Resting and restoring your soul. And this is such a big topic, regardless of a pandemic, although it has very much become something that's coming to the forefront for many people. Like, my soul maybe isn't in the best place. But either way, this is such a huge, huge topic that we must speak into. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. So if you're in the live chat with us tonight, please, any questions, please feel free to chuck them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those the best way we can. So we're going to start. We're going to go into it straight away, talking on resting and restoring your soul. And first question is this: in your opinion, why do you think soul care is so important? In your opinion, why do you think soul care is so important? Pam, I'm going to start with you on that one. Why do you think soul care is so important?
I think because otherwise we disconnect from our humanity. I think particularly as Christians, we've gotten good at looking after our spirits. And in the last probably 30 years, we've gotten good at looking after our bodies, right? We're all at the gym and doing the things. But we've disconnected from our emotional world, our mental health, all sorts of things. And when we do, I think we pay the price. So I think it's crucial to look after our soul, so that I guess I've been traveling through, I guess you guys are familiar with Pete Scazzero and his work on emotionally healthy discipleship. So we've been doing it in the college team. We've been traveling through one of his books, and just the impact that it has on our discipleship is very thin when we don't actually look after our soul and deal with what's going on in our souls. And I think particularly, because I live in the training leadership space, if you don't get people to look after their souls, then they become very unhealthy leaders, because the stuff comes out somewhere, right? Because they haven't looked after it and they haven't processed it, and so then it comes out somewhere, and it can come out on all the wrong places at all the wrong times, I guess, is my main thing. And also I just think that if we want to live lives that people look at and go, I want to follow them as they follow Jesus, we actually have to have healthy souls. because otherwise you know, it doesn't work, right? People look at our lives and go, I don't want what they're having, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because
Totally.
it's unhealthy, and it's there's a richness that's missing. I guess those are the few thoughts that
Yep. Love it. Very good. David, what are your thoughts on that? Why do you think it's so important, or why do you think soul care is so important?
What she said.
Yeah.
No, I think what I think is that faith, not feelings, is kind of, you know, people used to say that.
Yes.
Faith, not feelings, and it was a kind of abused thing, because it's like, you know, by faith I love people, and it's like, yeah, but you're a really angry, annoying person, so you know that doesn't help everyone. That by faith you, like, it doesn't mean anything, right? Then also people would kind of say faith, not feelings, meaning almost like you're supposed to ignore your feelings, and it's like that's a misunderstanding of, well, everything really, isn't it? So in reality, I think if you ask yourself, where is Christ being formed?
Yeah.
Because your spirit is one with God. So where is Christ being formed? It's being formed in the same place as that damage is, you know, where that damage is in your life. When your soul restoration is about Christ likeness. It's not just even like, oh, I'll have a better life. It's like, that is the only place, that's where you're becoming like Christ. Your spirit is already one with God, but your soul is the interface between spirit and the world and people around you. So wow. You know, all of what Pam said is absolutely right. And then, you know, I would say, like, that is the place of transformation. That's where it's taking place. So our ability to love is not limited by our spirit, because everyone knows when you're in the presence of God, oh, you know, you'll feel that love. Our ability to love is limited by all the areas of our life that are not Christ-like. And so that journey of discipleship is a journey of transformation taking place in your soul. That's what's happening. So there isn't an option to, I would say that there isn't really an option to avoid this. You know, I think there's a danger that we see this as a new kind of thing, almost like, you know, we just have to deal with mental health because that's important as well. And it's like, no, this is the journey of discipleship, is transformation into Christ likeness, becoming more like him, learning to love more. Where are you learning to love more? In your soul, your heart. So I think this is the journey, really. That's why soul restoration is so important. Is and everything Pam says is absolutely true in terms of leaders, the damage you see having done by leaders when they're not whole. And basically most people are living their life trying to fix their past and trying to compensate for deficits that have come from their past, and hence, you know, misusing people and things around us. And we're all on that journey. And we're not really free to give of ourselves until we are more whole, until we are more able to receive the love of God and then give out the love of God. So I think therein lies the journey, really. That's what I would say.
Yeah, so good. So good. And even as you just started speaking then, David, it's almost like this light shone greater around you. I don't know what's going on there. You started to permeate more and more.
There's no light in here. It's just
there's no windows.
No windows at all. No.
All right. So brilliant. And this is a big thing, because again, I love what both of you have said there. A lot of the time we have actually neglected the soul. There's been a lot of external activity. And even external Christian activity. And all the while there's been a neglect for the inside and for the soul. And what happens is eventually, you know, the external activity starts to wear you down, and you can't keep up with the pace of your own expectations on how you should be and you should be living, so on and so on. And then the inside becomes more and more aware. So let me ask you this. In your opinion, what do you think causes a soul to become unhealthy? What do you think makes a soul unhealthy? David, can I start with you on that one? What do you think causes a soul to become unhealthy?
I guess we're just carrying on from what we were just saying. And I think it's what causes a soul to become unhealthy in the first place is that we are all living in this imperfect world, and we experience an imperfect sense of love. We experience an imperfect sense of ourselves. We make decisions when we're children that we forget about when we are older. We build personalities around all sorts of stuff. I mean, I studied psychology in university, and it's interesting looking at child development and, you know, how we develop in our psyche and all of these kind of things. And And then as a social worker, then you see how some of the damage that comes from that brokenness. And I think what you also see is the legacy of generations, with damage going down from generation to generation, because people who experience imperfect love and can only love imperfectly. So you get that unhealthiness of the soul that comes just from living in an imperfect world, right? Then you get the danger in Christianity as well has been, as we've been discussing, that rather than actually allowing God to restore that, which is what he's all about, that's what this restoration is about, we cover things over with our faith journey. So we think it's about projecting, and we think it's about ignoring our feelings, and then our souls become, rather than becoming more healthy, they become less healthy. And we can use the things of God. And I think that's what's happened over the years. And that thing about faith, not feelings, is you trying to use the things of God to cover up the damage in our soul. And in reality, God's like, the very last thing that God needs is that, he requires more access than effort. So he's like looking to get into that. That's the whole point. Jesus said, I came to, the sick are the ones who need a doctor. And we're like often, as leaders, as created a culture, and over history created a culture where it's like we're like people going to the doctor, and the doctor says, so tell me what's wrong, and we're like, nothing is wrong, here I am, healthy as can be. Like, what are you doing at the doctor's? And it's like, you have to open up to God. So our souls become unhealthy when we think that instead of bringing our damage and our deficit to God for him to heal and to, giving him access, we think we're supposed to cover it up with a religious veneer or with some kind of faith language that sounds good, but actually has no power to change us. That's
so good. Pam, let me ask you this, Pam. Have you had moments in your life where you're like, man, my soul is getting unhealthy? And can you explain that a little bit to us, how it got there, and then what made you realize that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember pretty clearly a time when my soul got really unhealthy, probably about 8 years into my current job. And there was a whole lot of things going on. Overwork was one of them, overperforming, all sorts of stuff, no rest. In fact, and it was a student that actually started me on because I grew up, I went to a charismatic Anglican church in my early days as a Christian. We were all about prayer ministry. We were always getting prayed for to heal our hurts. And so I'd had a lot of that stuff and gone on a lot of journeys in my 20s. And then I got into ministry and started performing. And I had a student actually say to me once, if your life is what it is, I don't want it. And she was German, the direct.
Yes, straight down. Yeah,
it was awesome.
I do not want it.
Yeah. I do not want your life. And she just fully gave it to me, and I was like, and actually, I stopped me and went, oh golly, I just am overworking and overperforming and trying to be, and also probably in our church culture at that time, Muzz, you probably remember, it was pretty intense. It was pretty fast in the 2000s.
Yeah, fast-paced,
and also lots of faith, no feelings, lots of incorrect things like, I'm a new creation, it's all gone, I don't need to deal with anything, I'm a new creation in Christ. So I do remember that season, and how I had to deliberately put some things back in and put some rest back in, put some things back into my life. To restore my soul.
That's so huge. I love what you said there, Pam. I think it's so important. We take scriptures like that, which is like, I'm a new creation in Christ, which means neglecting and negating all these other things that are still there. And I think it's so important that we recognize that, yes, we are a new creation in Christ, but we're still not fully transformed yet. We're still on this journey. Again, sanctification, big theological word for those who are new to it. Sanctification is the process of being transformed.
Yeah, I love.
Which means
sorry.
You go, David. I was just going to say.
No. Finish. Sorry, I thought you finished.
Yeah. No. It's this process of being transformed. So I know that the end result. I can see the end result. If we do reverse engineering, what's the end result? Well, it's Jesus. We're trying to become more like him, but I'm not there yet. And so I'm now allowing that work of transformation to take place. and I'm allowing that to be, but it means that I have to go back and I got to, I've said this before to our church, sometimes, in fact, a lot of the times, Jesus has to take you backwards before he takes you forwards. He takes you back into your past and back into the sovereign foundations of our lives, where things happen to us that we were totally unaware of, that have really created who we are now. They created the product of the environment. We became the product of that environment, and it became very detrimental. So, David, you're going to say something? Please jump in.
Yeah, no, exactly. Just adding to that, I love what you said, Pam, about, that back in the day, there was lots of like praying for hurts, but there was often this sense of like suspicious, like, but we prayed about that. Why do you want to talk about it? By faith, you need to receive it. It wasn't there. It's like that kind of like, you are healed of absolutely everything now in Jesus' name. There you go. Okay, it's done. So why do you want to talk about this? And it's, in reality, I think that was just a kind of form of looking for a shortcut to avoid the pain of actually being vulnerable and the process that you're talking about, James. And I think
so true.
People are always looking for shortcuts, aren't we? We're always looking for shortcuts. And it'd be lovely if God just went from this to that. Right now, you're like Christ. There you go. But in reality, the journey is exactly what you say. It's that process and that willingness. Our souls become unhealthy when we kind of want instantaneous results, and we reject the kind of processes and the patterns and all of the rhythms, and also that stuff you're talking about. We kind of try to push that to one side and say, I want instantaneous results. So exactly, what you're saying. Yeah. And I think that's really healthy for people to hear, is that not everything comes just by being prayed for in that way. And the answer to prayer is very often an outworking that is years and years of stuff, God doing stuff and taking you through stuff and all sorts.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, and I'm about to jump into a question someone's put in the chat in just a moment, but it's interesting, just in observation, thinking about it, that a lot of the external healings that Jesus performed were immediate, but the emotional healings were actually not immediate. So again, we see the healing of a blind guy, the healing of a leper, the healing of all these things, but look at the healing of Peter internally. Peter's internal journey was more than, in fact, it was 3 years, and we see a real transformation after Jesus' resurrection. Of he's like, oh my gosh, I'm finally realizing on the inside, I got to get some things sorted. So that was actually a journey, which I think does, like you said, it gives us great comfort in that, okay, this is still a journey, and it's not going to happen overnight. It needs to be something that we allow that process to take place. Now, let me check this out to you guys. No, Pam, you're going to say something.
Well, even if we look at the life of Paul, depending on, the way people see it, there's up to 14 years of processing between when he gets saved and when he does stuff, because he's got to, he's been crucifying Christians. He's got to unpack stuff.
He's got pretty ugly fast.
He's got to he's got to work it out. Like we want it yesterday, we want everything fast. And our church culture wants to let's get them on the leadership track. Let's move people along. But actually people need time, and they need to go on the journey of the sanctification journey.
So true. Awesome. A question came in the chat from someone. Do you think prioritizing rest will allow you to see and hear things from God more clearly in comparison to perhaps not being well rested? I'll say that again. Do you think prioritizing rest will allow you to see and hear things from God more clearly in comparison to perhaps not being well rested? So I'd love to chuck out that one. David, what do you think on that? Do you think, again, I'm assuming they're talking about physical rest as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that actually changes our interaction with God?
Yeah, look, there's a big subject, and definitely is the simple answer. But it's interesting. I've written quite a lot on the Sabbath. I did that a series on the Sabbath called 52 Sabbaths. And when I first started writing it, when I felt to do it, I was like, well, after a few Sabbaths, I realized this is quite a lot of Sabbaths to write. It's like, wow. But the more I looked into it, the more I realized the Sabbath is really central, so much more so than we've given it credit. Like a quarter of the verses of the 10 Commandments are about the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Or as someone said, like 9 commandments and a suggestion. But because the Sabbath is the one commandment that Christians don't go, oh yeah, I did a bit of murdering, but I feel okay about that. Yes, we're not under the law, but for some reason, the Sabbath is almost like been pushed aside, and people are rediscovering that, realizing that actually the reason that what you're saying, what that question is, the reason it's so important. And the Sabbath, by the way, Walter Brueggemann says this. He says those who live the Sabbath differently live the other 6 days differently. So it's kind of like God gave us a blueprint. And you see some of the children of Israel when they are kind of going out and trying to get manna on the Sabbath. And God sort of says to Moses, it's almost like he's like, what don't they get about this? He says, do they not really? They must realize the Sabbath is my gift to them. And so God's given us this gift that is, and God's justification for it. He says, in 6 days I made the world. So it's pre-Torah, even the commandments. He says, you're made in my image. So if God rested, then clearly we need to find that rhythm that is, because we're made in God's image, right? So I think absolutely we need to find, and what I would say is we need to find the rhythms that God has for us. We need to find rest, because sometimes people are like seeing it as they don't see it holistically. We need to see it holistically. Like work is not a curse. That we need to be liberated from, right? The curse was toil, but so it's a rhythm that God wants us to find. And I think one of the things about restoring that sense of, because people often are very suspicious when you talk about the Sabbath, or not so much now, but they were. It's like we're not under the law.
Can I just interject there for a second, there, Dave? I just want to, just for anyone who's watching this and they're like, Sabbath, what does that even mean? Can you just explain that? I'm just assuming not everyone on this chat is watching this is fully aware of what that means. In your understanding, Sabbath, what does it mean?
Well, basically, God says, I've given you 6 days for your ordinary work. And then he says that you've got this one day, which is not for your ordinary work. It's a day where you are, and basically the main command is not to do your ordinary work. It's a day for rest. It's 24 hours. Now, for Jewish people, Jewish holidays start, and this is useful information for you, start at sundown, not in the morning. So the Sabbath is not Saturday morning to Sunday morning, it's Friday night, because that means it starts with a meal. You know what I'm saying? So and the whole point is God says, look, take this time is a time when you're going to stop. It literally means to stop, cease work, right? And you're stopping in order to come back to a sense of who you really are, your real identity, the fact that it is not in your work, it's in your relationship to God. You're coming back to the most important relationships of your life. You're coming back for 24 hours. It's a different time. Abraham Joshua Heschel calls it a cathedral in time. And the Sabbath is actually the first thing that is called holy in the Bible. So the first thing that God calls holy is not a place, a person. It is this block of time. And he's given us this gift. And Christians, because we've thrown out the baby of learning with the bathwater of legalism, have kind of gone, Jesus, it's really interesting. Jesus said the Sabbath, man was not made to meet the needs of the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of man. And what Christians have done over the years is they've taken that to go, oh, the Sabbath, we're not made to meet the needs of the Sabbath. And we've forgotten about the part that says, but the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of man. So we need that 24 hours. We need that block of rest. We have the weekend, but we don't have a full revelation about what it is until we look into the Sabbath and start to unwrap it. And realize that the Sabbath is so key for the rest for our souls that person is talking about, because and God's very practical, right? I think this is the thing, is God is very practical. You'll find that Israelis and Jewish people are very practical as well. Christians have talked traditionally much more about what they believe, and it's really important what you believe. And Jewish people don't. I rarely hear discussions about what Jewish people believe. But there's a lot of discussion about halakha, which is how you walk, how you live, how you apply the commandments in your life. And God's really practical, because we're like, oh, but Jesus is my Sabbath, he's my rest. And God's like, yeah, but you still have a body, and you still have a soul, and you still have a family, by the way, and you still need to actually rest. It's kind of like going, like the gym. The Sabbath is like God's gym for your soul to rest in, if that makes sense. You build the muscles of rest, because it's a thing that we do by faith, because you stop, not simply. God says, don't stop because you finished. You stop precisely because it'll never be actually finished. Your work won't be finished. You stop as an act of faith. So it's not a legalistic thing. It's putting
Yeah.
your trust and your faith back in God. And God
Love
says,
that.
do it each week, because it's kind of like going to the gym. If you don't have a set time you go, you'll just find 3 months later you just got a bit more of a paunch, and you're just like, yeah, I really love my gym membership. and I think
So good.
we can be a lot like that. So God's like, yeah, but just do it.
Yes.
And we're
yes.
like, well, it could be anywhere, anytime. And God's like, yeah, but just do it at a set time each week. I'm not too legalistic about like it has to be Friday night, because some people have to work and whatever else. But I think God says find a rhythm, and all of God's festivals and all of God's Sabbaths are about finding that kind of rhythm that then impacts our ability to hear from God, and then our ability to live out the way God intends with our families, with our community. And it ensures, one of the commandments about the Sabbath is stay in your place. In other words, it's kind of like sort yourself out, sort your relationship out with God, sort your close relationships out with God. Make sure you've got a healthy family and a healthy sense of community, and then you're stepping into the mission that God's got for you.
So beautiful.
Coming back to that, that's a kind of summary of the Sabbath. It's such a huge topic, because
it's massive.
If you look at God's judgment on Israel, right? You look again and again, God's judgment against Israel, because we think, it's all sorts of these things and those things, and it's God's judgment against Israel. So often the prophets will say, you have ignored my Sabbath. You have ignored my Sabbath, again and again and again. And God links the Sabbaths with idols and with injustice. And the thing about the Sabbath is revolutionary for its time. No other people had the Sabbath. And the Sabbath, that has a sense of it's for everyone. It's for, regardless of your status, it's a reminder we're all equal. It's a bringing back to
beautiful.
Once you get into it, it's such a, and so rest is integral to who we are as believers. It's not a kind of thing we do between being believer, it's like I'm taking some time off being a believer, and then I'm going to go back to my wound up faith on the Monday, on Sunday. It's finding the rhythm of God.
I love that. Pam, have you for you going into that whole, again, a rhythm of having that day of rest, what does that look like for you? What's some practical, if someone is watching this and it's like, okay, but tell me your way of living this out. What does that look like for you personally, Pam?
Well, I love that. I've read Heschel on the Sabbath. I love that, because my great grandmother's Jewish, so down my mother's line. So I'm technically Jewish. I'm not culturally Jewish, but for me, I love the Friday night to Saturday night, because I have church responsibilities, whether or not I'm on service. Sunday doesn't feel like a rest day for me. So I will, and I'm big on that. It changes everything else in your week. So I will get ready, I won't do any chores on Saturday. If I could avoid it, I had to go to the physio this week, but I will now hard in lockdown, I'll spend time with people that are life-giving. Like if it's not family, it's close friends. I'll probably do a walk outside. Yesterday I went to West Head and did a bushwalk just to connect with God and creation. And yesterday I baked randomly, which I'm not really, but like things that are a different work, like that are not my regular work. And also I do make sure because work creeps in, and I've got to go, God's in control. That's for me, the rest for my soul is I don't need to work. I don't need to run the college today. It'll be all right. And I don't need to think about it. So when the thoughts creep in, I'm actually have gotten really disciplined about, I'll think about that tomorrow. So it's about your thinking too. I'm quite intentional, and I go through phases too. I'll go through phases of lighting candles on Friday nights and playing some music. Like I went through a phase last year, the blessing phase. We play the blessing, I know it's funny, right? Just to get myself into, I am going to rest now for 24 hours, because that was part of my big crash in the 2000s. I was like, Saturday, I'd just crack up in my computer and I've got a few hours, I'll get some, I'll crash through some work. And you can't do it. It's not sustainable. You have to live in the rhythm that God created for you. That's how he created us. to live in this rhythm. We're created in his image to live in the 6 days. So yeah, it's quite intentional. Now I know it's hard for people with little kids. I don't have little kids, but I'm just aware of doing things that are restful and worshipful.
So good. Do you think, Pam, just on that, because you said you didn't do your Sabbath on a Sunday because of your heavy ministry involvement. Okay, someone did put in the chat, can you Sabbath on a Sunday?
I think most people can and do. Like I know my fam, I live in a big extended household, and my brother and sister-in-law and my nephews, they definitely Sabbath on a Sunday. Like I was having lunch with them today, and one of the boys went to get out his phone. And they're like, no, we're not doing technology today. So because their life's at a different place and they volunteer midweek at their church, they don't do anything on a Sunday. So yeah, I think you can go to church, worship God, and then spend time with your family. Yeah, I think you totally can. Yeah.
So good. And I think it's interesting because Jesus, I think a lot of people look at the Sabbath and they think it's about solitude, which I think it can have moments of solitude in it. But Jesus did Sabbath with his disciples too. He had people around him. And obviously, I think it's different based on different personalities. For some people, they are introverted, and for them, rest is not people.
Yes.
No, I don't want to be around people at all. Doesn't mean I don't love them. I just need to have my recharge moment away from people. Yeah. And there's some people who get recharged from being around people. And I think there has to be moments, in my opinion, I think there's moments within Sabbath that require you to have a space of solitude, because solitude is not being alone, it's just being alone with God.
Yes.
And that's the difference. It's not isolation, it's solitude. Isolation is just me with nothing else.
Yeah.
But solitude is me with God.
Yes.
And so I think there needs to be a space for that within there, because it's about, again, that Shabbat, right? It's that I'm actually going to spend some time and actually be grateful and give you this moment of just gratitude in that, and say, thank you. I'm going to rest in what you've done, rest in what happened even in gratefulness for what happened throughout the week.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful place to recharge, is gratitude towards God for that.
And because it's not rushed, there's more time. Like I'll read more of the scriptures than I normally do. Like just spend a little bit more time, or read some. I tend to, like, I'm reading On the Road with St. Augustine from Smith at the moment. So I spent some time yesterday reading a bit of that, like something that's going to nurture my soul. And I also make sure, because I've read John Mark Comer, I never buy anything on a Sabbath.
Oh,
one of my things.
I love it.
Yeah, like if I have food, of course you can buy food on the Sabbath, but I'm like, I got to get rid of the consumer thing too on the Sabbath, right?
Right. Yeah.
Get rid of online shopping, or I don't need to be part of that on a Sabbath. I need to, have some, but yeah, because I'm an extrovert, it's normally there's a lot of people, but it's the right people, right? It's the close people.
How do you reckon, David, I'm going to check this one to you. A question that came in the chat was, how can we help create a community that actually, how do we help create a culture, I should say, that sees resting your soul and working on internal healing as a slow journey rather than a quick fix? I'll say that again. How can we help create a culture, and this is referring to church cultures, that sees resting your soul and working on internal healing as a slow journey rather than a quick fix? How do you think we create that culture, David, in your opinion?
Honestly, I think it's just about having a shifting our understanding in the ways that we are having these kind of discussions, and about, creating, I mean, a lot of it comes from having healthy leadership, right? Which is what Pam was talking about, because Christianity is not information, it's incarnation, isn't it? So Jesus doesn't point the way over there and say, look, you should be heading that way. He says, follow me. And Paul says, imitate me. And so that, we talk about creating culture. I think what's really important, because we're human beings and people kind of do what they think is valued, right, by others. And if you create a culture where what's valued is quick fixes, is with gifting over character, is all of these things, then that's the culture that you reproduce, because you reproduce after your own kind. So if we create healthy leaders, and that's where there's no shortcuts, because it's leaders who have to kind of say, they have to acknowledge that their own processes. They have to be transparent, come into that place where Jesus said, just call one person rabbi, I'm your rabbi, and leaders who kind of go, look, I'm in this position, but I'm on the same journey. We're all on the same journey. It's okay. You know, we're all in this together, and make no pretense of being something other than what they are. That whole fake it till you make it. And you know, there's even a culture when I was kind of first a believer of like, if you're a leader, you can't be friends with the people who, you know, you can't really be friends too close. You can't be too close to the people. And I think that to the people that you're leading. And I think there was almost this sense of like, because then they'll see who you really are. I don't know. It was just a very unhealthy idea of like keeping a bit of distance when Jesus says to his disciples, I called you friends, you know, and the whole process of following a rabbi was like doing a life with them. So I think if we create that kind of culture where we are being real, we are walking with one another, and we love one another, we honor one another, we realize what's important and what's not, I think that's a good thing to think about. I think also it's about being really honest, you know, about what actually about ourselves, but also being really honest about what we want. Like Pam was saying, you know, that German lady who spoke to you, you know, I've had German lady moments. Wait, that doesn't sound right. But you know, we all need those moments, don't we? Like where it's like reality. And I think a lot of this stuff is just taking that stuff that is just about here, you know, like over here, that we keep spending a lot of effort to push away, and instead of pushing it away, just going, okay, let's just look at this. Are we creating communities? Are we inviting people to be part of something that we actually enjoy? You know, are we inviting people to be part of a community that is actually worth being part of? And I think it's about, like I said, being a lot more practical and a little less spiritual, you know, rather than creating a kind of spiritual language for people to adopt. I think it's also about stripping back all those layers and creating a really real, honest culture that is life affirming, positive in all the right ways, and teaches people what it really means to know God, and gives people permission. You see, one of the things that we don't do, that we're learning to do, let me put it that way, that we're learning to do, that I think is really was lost when the kind of Jewish mode of discipleship is the ability to ask questions and the ability for people to have honest discussions. And we see all those discussions between Jesus and his disciples as they're stupid and he's clever, and you know, they keep asking dumb questions. In reality, that's like the process of discipleship, is ask questions, you know, have discussions. And so if we create that kind of healthy culture where people don't think that they're not supposed to talk about certain topics, whereas instead we create a culture where it's like, no, but you're coming to, the whole point is we're free to be ourselves and to allow God into those areas of our lives, and we create that kind of healthy culture. I think that process, and I think it's committing to the long journey as well.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And that's as church leaders, and I think that's as disciples, and I think that's as, you know, it's just generally understanding that we're on what's it called? Eugene Peterson called a long obedience in the same direction. You know, he was quoting from Nietzsche, like philosopher, but nonetheless, I think that is, if we start to realize, okay, it's okay, you know, we don't need overnight success. What we need is ongoing transformation of ourselves and our culture.
Love it.
Then I think that's the healthy culture we get. And I think that's avoiding extremes as well, and sort of avoiding kind of swinging from one thing to the other, realizing that no, we have to do it all at the same time, like not literally all at the same time, but I mean, you know, we don't just kind of go, right, we're in a season now where all we're going to learn about is rest, and so we're just going to sort of pause absolutely everything else. It doesn't quite work like that. Yes, you do with what God is teaching, but a healthy culture kind of acknowledges, I think, all of those things. God might emphasize certain things.
So good.
But, you know,
beautiful.
I think.
No, I love it. There's some great truths there. Now, one of the big things we wanted to cover tonight is, again, is this whole idea of resting and restoring your soul. And you guys have given so many brilliant advice already on just even Sabbath and being vulnerable and transparent. I love all that stuff. It's so important to this journey. But I do believe there's a difference between resting and restoring. I think there's a difference between resting and restoring, and that's what I wanted to speak about as well tonight. Starting with this topic of restoring your soul, because I think a lot of people are not giving enough attention to restoration. of their soul. Again, maybe they're just trying to quick move on. Let's go, as opposed to, no, we actually need to restore some things. Again, if you were to jump in an old, decrepit, rusty car and start driving it on a long distance drive without first restoring that car or having a process of restoration, hey, maybe the journey is going to be you might get there, but it might be a lot more difficult. It might not be as smooth as you'd like. Okay, so what has helped you restore your soul? That's the question I want to ask. What's helped you, or what could help others bring restoration to their soul? Pam, any thoughts on that? What could bring restoration to someone's soul?
Yeah, I think we've lost a few skills along the way, probably because we lost the Jewishness of our faith. I think we lost the ability to lament and to actually process grief. And so and I think the whole world's in a bit of grief at the moment. We've been shocked and we've lost a lot. And we don't know how to do it. And I've been so challenged lately by Jesus, like fully crying in front of his disciples at Lazarus' tomb in the garden, like just and of course the Psalms and Lamentations, like the ability to actually I think process our grief and deal with it. And I think for those of us, James and I, the Pentecostals, I think we've been very bad at that. And so our souls are shriveled up on the inside a little bit in that area, or there's just this mountain of grief down there that we don't know what to do with. And so we don't deal with it. So I think actually learning the skill again of actually grieving properly when something happens. And then at the same time, actually, that I think when you learn how to grieve properly, then you can celebrate properly as well. Like I just think that then your soul can go on the whole range of emotions rather than like got to keep it all at bay because it might overtake me.
Yeah, it might get ugly. Yeah.
It might get ugly. And so if it does, it does, but I think it's because we've lost the skills along the way, but I think they're coming back. I think there's people are talking a lot about the ability to grieve and process and lament and deal with things that I think is going to help us then to be able to rejoice with those who rejoice as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, I guess for me that it would be some of those emotional skills that we've lost that we are getting restored. And they're all in the richness of our faith.
Yes.
Like psychology is unpacking them now, but they're in there. They were in the richness of our faith already.
Yes.
We just, I don't know, somewhere along the way lost them, I think.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think again, because we get so focused with the rest of the world, got caught up in the culture of the world, which is like outside, external.
Yeah.
Look good. If you look good, then you're good. As opposed to, oh no, actually, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of lift up the bonnet. This thing is not running too well, and there's a lot of stuff we need to deal with. David, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think can help someone restore their soul?
I mean, we've started touching on it. I think what Pam says is absolutely right. I think we've started touching on this earlier on. I think a correct understanding of faith is a good starting place. So faith often has been used as a kind of barrier to experiencing what's really going on the inside, almost like I've got faith, so I don't need to deal with this stuff. And in reality, what you see in the Psalms, for instance, you're talking about lamenting and celebrate. You see David repeatedly bringing his mess, and I think to God, and he says, I'm this. This is terrible. This is not good. But you, Lord, can come in and do this. And I think faith is less kind of, trying to pretend the mess isn't there, and faith is actually trusting God to come into the mess and do what He says He's going to do. Right.
Yes.
So the way I see it, I like to use this analogy, which is that your life is a bit like a hotel. When you get saved, the management of the hotel changes, so like it used to be owned by the devil, now it's owned by God, right? But God leaves you in charge, and He says, okay, like, right, we're on, like, this is our project. Now most of us, what we do is we have we see the lobby area of our life, everyone see the public area, and we're like, I need to get rid of this drug addiction, or I need to get rid of whatever it is, big issues in our life, or things that are more obvious that we want to deal with. And so God's like, okay, yeah, let's deal with that. And He deals with it, and He changes our soul in those areas. And then we are like, okay, we're good. let's get the guests in. God's like, there is this wing, the east wing, you know, those kind of doors that, you know, are locked, and that this hotel was pretty trash before. So what's in that wing? And we were like, no, the lobby. Look at the lobby. It's great. Like, and yeah, we're going to have to, once God's decided, like, look, he knows what this hotel is going to be, and he's got a glorious plan. And it's not that he hasn't got a glorious plan. It's that his plan isn't just to have a lobby, a sort of public face. He genuinely wants to restore us, but we have to be willing. He will never see. God requires our access. That's what I'd say for people to hear. Is God is looking for your access to your heart and to all those things in your life more than your effort, you know. And I think in the past we've kind of emphasized effort. You know, I have to confess the scriptures, you know, furiously in the mirror, you know, I'm a new creation, until eventually it just by osmosis sort of happens. And instead God's like, no, honesty is what God requires. And so somewhere along the line, now what happens is often because we're not willing to go down that east wing, God often brings experiences that kind of remind us that the east wing's there, you know, and he lets things happen. It's like, and eventually, because really the fear of opening those doors, of those areas of our hearts that have been damaged, that rejection, all the other stuff that is worse than actually once you open them, you know, it's getting the lid off the jar that's the hard bit. Getting the pickles out is quite easy. And so God then can come in and start changing those areas. And then we see this transformation that is really about the whole of our lives being transformed, not simply the bits that allow us to do church on a Sunday more or less okay, you know. So then it's kind of like our ability to love, and then the fullness of that, what God's got for us, that restoration process, you know, isn't just about us sort of being patched up. It's about actually the fullness of who God has called us to be, right? So I've forgotten what the question was, but I think it was something about restoring the soul.
Yeah.
The how,
yes,
how it happens is that for me is the process, you know. And so creating a culture where people realize it's okay to acknowledge the east wing, to acknowledge the different rooms, and to unlock those rooms. And that means what Pam was saying about having skills. What we need is to value people who, you know, have that ability to really help people open up and listen. And I think it's funny because I think we have turned the word pastor into something a bit different, haven't we? Which is that for us, you know, pastor is really a leader of a church. But the gift of pastoring, that ability to actually allow people to open up, you know, our pastor David Harland, who previous pastor, you know, was like the epitome of a gift of a pastor. You could go into his office having, you know, murdered somebody and embezzled and started the terrorist organization and come out feeling great about yourself, you know, because it's just like real pastor. But I think we need to create cultures where people can unpack without being judged, you know. I remember when we took over the young adults ministry, and we were doing a lot of this stuff, and some of the young adults who'd previously seemed to be quite happy suddenly began, you know, at the altar weeping, and I think people thought, what's happened? Have they lost their faith? And it's like, no, we were encouraging people to actually open up all the stuff they'd been carrying. And I think most people basically are carrying stuff in church. Think about culture. Most people are carrying stuff in church that is way beyond what they will ever talk about or what anyone else will see. And we all think we're struggling with these things on our own, whether it's mental health issues, abuse issues from the past. I mean, honestly, the churches would not been good at creating a culture where people can open up. And I think if we can do that, we have the possibility over the next years to become genuinely a church that is ahead of culture instead of always behind culture, you know. But unless we do that, unless we embrace that, we're always kind of got this thing where people come in and they think they have to speak a new language and, you know, be living up to something that is kind of here. And I think if we can create the opposite, a culture which is really, I think, what I see in the New Testament, where Paul says, you know, you were all broken, we were this, we were that, we were not many of us wise, you know, we're all duffers, really, you know, in by the grace of God, somehow or other. If we can create that kind of culture that says then I think we will that'll be the culture that helps people restore their souls.
So good. Pam, let me ask you this. Like, as someone put in the chat, how do you know when your soul is restored, or doing a lot better and you're ready to go again? I think that's a really good question. I think
That's a really good question.
I feel like, and the reason why I think this is a good question too, because I think a lot of, there has to be, there is a bit of a tension here. I get this.
Yeah.
We're always going to be a work in progress.
Yeah, we are.
Paul says, hey, forgetting what's behind, I press forward. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I'm still going. All right. So, which means, but we still have things that God prepared in advance for us to do. Right. We still have the ministry or the vocation that God has given each and every one of us individually. So how do you know? What does it look like where you go, okay, I think I'm ready to go again? What do you think are some good, healthy signs for that?
Yeah, I don't really know, because I don't think I've ever really. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't. Yeah.
Can I throw out an answer?
Yes, please do. While I think about it.
Only because this is something that I have sort of dealt with quite a lot in terms of personally for me, and therefore I might maybe, and also I suppose in my social work stuff and in church. I think one useful tip. First of all, I think the answer is that one of the reasons I think we're sort of thinking of an answer is that actually there isn't a kind of like, oh, I've got there, my soul is fully healthy now, and therefore I'm on my way. So I think it's a bad idea to, like, we follow the rhythm of God, but we don't stop doing stuff because we're like, I'm just restoring my soul now. No, your soul is going to be being restored your whole life. So you might as well carry on doing what you're supposed to be doing, unless God is pulling you back. But I do think one helpful tip for this person who's asking the question is this. One of the ways that there is stuff in your soul that needs dealing with is like when buttons get pushed. You know what I mean? You overreactions to stuff. So you kind of, somebody says something and you find yourself kind of like shouting at them or feeling like I want to kill them or whatever it is. You have these overreactions. Don't ignore them, but bring those to God and find somebody you trust to talk about them. And what you find is, if you are really honest with them and try and suppress them, if you allow God into those areas, what you'll find is that God is not just interested, because most of us are trying to control external circumstances to stop them from pushing our buttons. And what you find if we do the opposite and bring it to God is all about undoing the button, so that actually you'll find your reactions have changed. So I sort of think that one of the best ways you notice, and really often you don't notice immediately, you just suddenly realize, those things that person's saying normally would have really triggered stuff in me, but now they're not. And I think personally, because they're like bruises that get pressed. Reaction, like there's a bruiser. So I personally find that one of the best ways to notice is that our reactions start to change, but I don't think we'll ever arrive.
No, and that's the thing. I don't think we're ever going to do that. I think one of the greatest indicators of someone experiencing restoration, or definitely on the healthier end of restoration, especially obviously it's case by case. There's different things that God's restoring us in, but I think one of the greatest ways to indicate that we are being restored is actually our ability to talk about it openly. I think that is one of the greatest indicators that you are experiencing that restoration, because you can, with freedom, talk about things. So someone who's had an addiction, again, I'm not saying this is absolutely the only way, but I'm saying this is one of the ways I think that restoration is best seen, is that, I can talk about this. I was actually really addicted to that, or actually, I was really angry all the time, but let me tell you about what I used to do, but what God did. And I think that is, again, a great indicator that now you have the freedom. When you're not free of something, you're very hesitant to bring it into the light. You're very hesitant to talk about it openly.
You're protecting all the time.
You're in defense mode. But when you can say, I did really have a struggle with that, the type of thought process. I had some really dark thoughts, but man, I'm finding that I'm getting better at this. I'm finding I'm really conquering this. I think that is an indicator you're doing that. Now, time, we're already gone past the time that we had allotted, but we'll go a little bit longer because this is such a great topic and you guys are amazing, and the voice doesn't start for another half an hour. So, but let me ask you this. So, to help restore a soul, we're going to recognize that, yes, this is a journey. So for those out there watching this, restoration is a journey. I just want to chuck out some thoughts there that restoration happens. I spoke about this in our church today, that reconciliation is between us and God and us and one another. It's almost like the cross, vertical, horizontal. And I think in the same way that restoration is the same thing. It's this me and God. Okay, God, let's journey this out together. Reveal through your word, reveal through the Holy Spirit the things you want to restore and help me through. But then also community around us, getting around other people who can bear the burden with you, who can help you, they can encourage you, they can build you up, and help you take that restoration journey, because that's what the church is for, I believe. We're encouraging one another to become more and more like Jesus, to restore to the original, the perfect man, and the perfect person, which was Jesus, and that's the blueprints we're going off. But we need to go to this next one, because we're talking about resting and restoring. So we've talked a little bit about restoring. We could go for 7 more hours on that, I believe. But what about rest? How do you help rest your soul? You both have said we're living in times where this is very hard to do. What advice would you give someone to experience rest more in their life? Pam, I'm going to start with you.
There's this thought that keeps coming to me as we're talking about this, that there's a piece of in God of beauty that our soul needs, and so I think there's and that somehow there's something in beauty that rests our souls. So whether it's like I always tell my students, get outside in creation. We need our brains need to see blue and green. We need to hear beautiful music. We need to see beauty in people. Like there's something in beauty that helps, I think, rest our souls as well, and then shuts out all the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? Like that. So one of the things I really noticed, now I'm going to sound like a total princess at this point in time, but anyway, what the heck, is that because I could travel for my job a bit, going to conferences and whatever around the world, one of the things I really noticed in COVID, because obviously no one's traveling anywhere, especially Australians, we're locked on this island, and is that I'm not seeing, because when I would travel, I'd tack on a day and go check out an art gallery. And so it was part of my rhythm. I didn't even realize it. And so I'm not seeing beautiful art in the same way. And because it was part of travel life and that life. So I realized I wasn't seeing things that are beautiful. And then I'm watching too much news, social media, whatever else. But my soul needs beauty.
Wow.
It needs, our souls need God is beautiful. We need to gaze upon him, the beauty, but also beauty in people and beauty in art and beauty in music, the creative things that he gave us. And it's different for all of us. Some people, the idea of walking through an art gallery is, that's not beautiful to them. That's torture. But and I know that. But for me, it is. And also just different, like looking at beautiful old buildings and walking on beaches. So I think that there's a rest part of our soul that needs beauty and needs to get rid of the noise, because there's a lot of noise right now.
So much.
And there's a lot. I don't think it's helpful to our souls at all. I don't think our souls were designed to deal with all of the information we have. Like I had this moment when Afghanistan all blew up, and I've also got a bunch of stuff going on in my family. I've got 2 family members quite unwell and a very good friend in America very unwell. And then Afghanistan happened. I'm like, I can't deal with that as well. And then I realized I'm not meant to deal with that. My soul cannot actually process what is going on with, girls in Afghanistan. Actually, I need to look after my mum and my sister and my friend and my students. Like our souls, it's just too much. I think there's just too much. We get compassion fatigue, all those things. So I just think pulling back, simplifying our lives, getting some beauty in it, and looking after the ones that God's given in us in our hands, not trying to. And I'm not saying the church shouldn't be involved in justice and Christian, all that. I'm not negating it. I'm all for it. But our souls can get overwhelmed, I think, in this season by how much pain and suffering are in the world. I think there's times when we just need to check out. Like that's what Sabbath is too, right? Checking out for a while and letting our souls just rest and be in beauty. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, it's great. It's great. David, what about you? And our time is starting to run up, but what would help someone rest their soul? What advice would you give someone to experience that more in their life?
Honestly, I absolutely love what Pam was just saying. I have to say, I thought that was really beautiful. And there's two things there that you're talking about beauty, and I think I just echo that in the sense that I think it brings rest to our soul when we see our faith as holistic, and we have a holistic sense of life rather than this, if you think of a Venn diagram where you've got this spiritual slice and then you've got all the other areas of life. And I think a lot of our lives we spend feeling guilty about not making the spiritual slice obviously it's bigger, when instead we'll find rest if we just realize that actually it's allowing God into every bit of our lives and trusting that we don't have to live with that nagging sense that we should be doing more the whole time, recognizing our limits. That was what I hear from what Pam was saying. And I think that in itself brings a certain rest. Is because the world runs on FOMO. I mean, advertising, everything that we see runs on. So, and I loved also, that what you're saying about beauty. I think we've been at times too suspicious of almost like indulging ourselves. It's like to enjoy all those things Pam was talking about. I think 20 years ago people would be like, oh, surely you should be out doing the work of the gospel, and it's it's wrong theology. And so I love that. So I just echo that, which is God made us a certain way. It took me ages. I write songs, and it took me ages to realize that I don't have to squeeze myself into a mold of writing a specific type of worship song, because God's made me a certain way. So write what's in your heart. If, as you were saying, enjoy what the people that you enjoy nature. If you enjoy nature, go to the movies. If you enjoy a movie, don't live with a nagging sense that all the time you should be praying more, you should be doing this and should be doing that. And I think the Sabbath just helps with that, because the Sabbath isn't about an absence of work. It's more about, that absence of work, it's more about the presence of all those things that you were talking about, Pam, as well as kind of that sense of reconnecting with God and others. So I guess it's all of those things.
So good. I love that. I think a big one, just as we start to close as well on that, is there is that beautiful truth of Sabbath, having that day a week to do that. And I want to encourage everyone who's watching this, take the challenge. Take God at his word and take a day in which you will switch off. And again, hey, maybe it can't start with a day. Maybe you're like, man, I just got to start with a couple of hours of really disconnecting. Cool, do what you can do. But I would encourage you to really take God at his word. Take that day, 24-hour period or more, where you can, sundown to sunrise the following day, and just allow yourself to rest and Shabbat, to stop and delight in the Lord, all that. But I would also encourage as well, if you want to find rest for your soul, I actually think there's green pastures and still waters every morning
for sure.
People. And I just want to encourage everyone who's watching this, that Psalms 23, if you could have a scripture to really go for. If I was going to have a rest scripture outside of Matthew 11:28, it would be Psalms 23. And it would be this good shepherd that David had a revelation of, that he said, and David had a lot of things that he was going through and struggles and so on and so forth, but he had this revelation of no, he's my good shepherd, and he's going to lead me to quiet waters, and he's going to make me lie down in green pastures. Make me, as if to say, I'm still running after so many other ones, that God's no, I'm trying to make you stay. I'm trying to make you actually enjoy the pasture I have for you, but actually having a daily moment where you can say, God, I'm gonna spend time with you, like you would with any relationship, especially the most important ones. And God, I'm just going to sit with you. And I would encourage people, one of the greatest forms of rest is to be present with God. Not even his prayer requests, his my Bible study. No, just sit.
Yes.
Say, God, I want to be present with you. I want to be there with you, and I want to enjoy your company, and I want you to enjoy mine. And we're going to sit together, and I'm going to let you just restore my soul. I'm going to let you have this moment, because he's the one who said he'll do it. He said he restores my soul, not you. He restores your soul. So I think it's a big thing for all of us to take in. David, I can see your beautiful little boy there coming in to make a guest appearance. What a legend. Hey, buddy. So good to see you, man.
Isaac.
Thank you.
Yes,
5.
he's 5. What a cute.
Yep. It's called Levi.
Hmm.
Oh, I love it. Well, guys, we've come to an end of our time. Oh, yes.
Last thing, because just Psalm 23. Do you know that Psalm 23 is linked to the Sabbath? And Jewish people read Psalm 23 coming out of the Sabbath each Sabbath. So
Wow, I did not know that.
just thought I'd throw that out there. It's linked to this. It's very much connected to the Sabbath in Jewish thinking. So it's I love that sense of every day, because that's that sense of I'm coming into the week. The Psalm 23 is what leads me into that. So
good. Beautiful. Well, our time has come up, but we definitely need to talk more about these matters. And man, we again, there's so much more. It's like inexhaustible, the amount of stuff we could talk about around these topics. But just want to thank everyone for jumping on who watched us live here tonight. If you enjoyed any of the content that was talked about tonight, one of the greatest things you can do is share it. Share the link with someone else. Say, hey, this has helped me. I think this might help you. Because this is now up on YouTube, ready for anyone to get a hold of. So make sure you share the content, and we cannot wait to have more conversations like this. Pam, you're amazing. David, you're amazing. We so appreciate the time that you've taken to be with us.
Thanks.
And we can't wait to actually put into practice. And I want to encourage everyone watching this, start to put some of this stuff into practice. So again, what was the word you said that the Jewish people use about belief? It's not just about belief, it was about your actions. What did you say, David?
Oh, halakha. It's
Halakha.
About it's about how your walk. It's really about your walk, how you apply the commandments of God to your daily living. If people are interested, the 52 Sabbath thing will kind of unpack a lot of this stuff much more. But really, that halakha is really the word I think you were talking about. Is it?
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And that's what I want to leave people with, that you would have that halakha. You'd actually go, okay, I'm not going to just have a head full of knowledge or puffed up with knowledge. I'm actually going to put this into practice. I'm going to live this stuff out and start to, faith and works. I'm going to put this together. I'm going to go and let God do some great stuff in me as I obey and follow his leading. So, man, we're so grateful. Thank you, everyone, for jumping on with us tonight. Again, share the content. Stay tuned for more panels like this. But we can't wait to see you very soon. Thanks for joining us.